All right, well, it is 5 o'clock Pacific time on the dot. Welcome to Beaver Politics. Welcome to News Hour. Usually, News Hour is all about me giving you guys updates on everything that's been happening and then having a short open panel. But tonight, just, because of everything that's been going on, we're just going to pretty much do an open panel all night. We're going to talk about what's happening as a community because right now our community is important. We need to stick together. And I think it's really important that all of us are up here discussing rather than me just talking and blabbing for a full hour about what's going on. I feel like most people have a pretty good idea right now what's going on. So. Okay. Hey guys, I'm just going to ask you to, once you come up on the panel, just mute your mic for a little bit. I am going to do a very short summary and then we're going to open up the panel for discussions, but I am just going to get it going for now. Okay. I am just going to switch up how many people we can have up here. Let's try to get a full panel going. There we go. There we go. Greetings, greetings. I can't come up. I'm always cooking at this time. Ooh, you're making falafel. That sounds nice.
Why falafels?
Hi, Joe.
Today's Tuesday. G'day. Today's Tuesday. It's supposed to be tacos. Let's be honest here. It's Tuesday.
Yeah, right? Well, you can make falafel tacos.
Yeah.
Right? I know they
guess.
might not be as exciting, but you can make falafel tacos.
I guess. It would,
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm going to try to get some more people up on the panel and then we'll do me giving you guys a summary and then we're going to start chatting about it. Cuz there's a lot of stuff right now that we just don't know what's happening, right? There's so much unknown. There's so much that's up in the air. Especially with Trump addressing Congress tonight. I saw Panda in here too. There we go.
But
All
how do you
right.
feel about Justin? How do you feel about Justin's response today?
I think it was great.
It was needed.
It was needed, very needed.
I like that he called him Donald. So I've been doing that for a few years now, and what I always meant by it is it's supposed to be like an uncomfortable familiarity. It's like I see who you are, so I can refer to you by the first name. I think that's maybe what Justin's saying. He knows who Donald Trump is.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the best speeches of his career. All right, guys, I'm gonna get you to. I'm just gonna get you.
Angry.
I'm gonna get you to mute though for just a couple of minutes here so that we can do kind of a quick summary.
Oh,
And then we'll open up the panel for discussion. I just wanted you guys to be up here with me. I think everybody here kind of knows what's been going on with Ukraine. Very short summary. United States said they're going to pull aid. They also said that they're looking at lifting sanctions off of Russia. It's become very, very clear that Russia and the United States are working together. I don't think there's anything that anybody can say. Even Trump's own supporters are not saying that they're not working together. They're just pro them working together, which is absolutely nuts. But that's the reality. We had Russian state media in the Oval Office when Trump and Vance played political theater and ganged up on Zelensky to try and make him look bad and try to pin blame on him. It's been a crazy couple of days, right? The EU is obviously scrambling right now to try and put together as much aid as humanly possible for Ukraine. We don't really know what's going to happen. Everything seems to be up in the air. There's talks that Zelensky is now going to go back to the United States and sign on to the mineral deal, which to me, personally, I don't like it. I can understand why he feels maybe forced to do it. As a leader of a country that's been fighting for 3 years, do you really want to keep trying if there's not an actual solution available? Or How long can you keep it going? If the United States lifts sanctions off of Russia, then that can make Russia stronger and they could have more resources to keep going longer. So we just don't know. We genuinely just don't know at this point in time. The EU is definitely stepping up, though, right? Norway is unlocking $1.7 trillion sovereign wealth fund to help fund Ukraine. So there are a lot of European countries that are getting their stuff together and helping out. Hopefully they'll come together and Zelensky won't need to sign this mineral deal, because at the end of the day, to me personally, again, my own personal view, just so that everybody knows, is that if he signs this mineral deal, United States gets to basically colonize Ukraine. They get to use it as their own personal mining factory. And that to me is devastating. So I'm hoping that the EU can do everything possible to make sure that doesn't happen.
Without the UN, I have a question for you, and I'm sorry if I'm interrupting you, but I just want to put it on the itemized list of things to discuss. With Russia being on the UN Security Council, what does a coalition that could actually help Ukraine look like worldwide from your perspective? Because you know more than I do.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be the EU and Canada having to come together on this. Whether we have the resources to do it, that's something that we need to figure out. And we need to figure out if the countries in the EU are actually going to band together, right? Like Italy said they don't want to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. So there's certain countries that are going to help, maybe certain countries that aren't going to help. We still have to figure it out. Ms. Radical?
Sorry, I'm a little slow on the microphone. Zojin just hit you up in the comments and he said to check your Discord. There's really good news in Norway. Apparently, Norway is reconsidering opening up the coffers to support the Ukraine. I just went and double checked that. Ukraine, sorry. He's correct. That's great news.
Yeah, I just said that they're willing to open up $1.7 trillion for support for Ukraine.
Yeah, that's really good news.
I don't know why Zelensky would even trust Trump in any kind of deal. You know, because this isn't about just the minerals. It's not like everything's going to be fine after the minerals are signed over.
At the end of the day, I think that they're trying to do everything they can to explore every diplomatic way of handling this before it turns into a bigger conflict. Because if we're brutally honest, Canada and the EU are not prepared for a giant global conflict right now. We're just not. We need years to be able to actually get financially and militarily prepared for that. Like, you know what I mean? And this whole tariff trade war is weakening our economy. It's going to be weakening our country. Hopefully there's some way out. Like, as I said, they're already talking about the fact that, maybe now we're going to meet Canada halfway. We just don't know. But to keep us guessing or to put us in this economic hardship due to the tariffs, I mean, we're going to need some time. And I think that trying every diplomatic way possible to deal with this buys us the time that we need to figure out how we're going to retaliate against the United States and Russia.
So we're just biding our time. We're telling our enemies we need some time to build up our forces, and then we're going to go to war.
Well, what like if that happened today, what do you think would happen, right?
I don't know.
In all honesty, right? In all honesty, we don't have the military they have.
We have.
Russia?
Hang on a second. We have militias, and we have militias in small forces all across this country. We have 30,000 reserves. We have a large population of our country that are veterans that are willing to step back into their positions, including my cousin who just retired. I mean, speaking to some of the veterans, they're ready to rearm. We don't have the equipment per se because our equipment is old, but we have been procuring that for the last 9 years with the Liberal government, right?
You got some really bad background noise. Sorry, it's kind of hard to hear you a little bit.
Sorry, the fans from work, sorry. But again, we also have Finland, which is part of NATO now, which has got a huge army. The Danes have a huge army. The way that with them just joining NATO is actually a beneficial thing for Europe, right? So I'm not, and Italy's always going to be a discourse because she is also right wing. So
Yeah.
are we prepared to go today? Maybe not today, but give us 6 weeks and we'll be ready to go.
I get right. That's why I wanted to have an open panel and have a discussion about it, because at the end of the day, we all have our own different opinions on it. My opinion is that we need a little bit more time. Yeah, I mean that's my own personal opinion, but I'm very open to other people's opinions, and I would be very happy to know that we could completely, defend ourselves and defend, because the thing is, they're trying to start shit with so many different places around the world, right? Like they're threatening Mexico too. We're not the only ones that are being threatened here. So whether they actually go through it or not, I have no idea. I know they're going to try to do this through a trade war and through economic hardship and through psychological warfare first, right? Especially if they can get politicians in power here that would give them whatever they wanted. That way they don't even have to try that hard. So I don't think it's going to be like a boots on the ground type of conflict between us and the States necessarily anytime soon. But we have to look at what's going on in Europe, because we are on the EU side with what's going on in Europe. And we know that if this whole thing with Ukraine, for example, comes to a ceasefire and where Ukraine has to give up land, do you honestly think it's going to be peaceful forever? No, I think that Russia's just going to take another couple of years, get strong, and then invade all over again. But this time it's going to hit NATO land. And if it does, then we're involved. We don't have a choice but to put troops on the ground and fight for NATO.
What do you think is the fastest track to protecting Ukraine in this current situation? And do you think that would be exemplary for how the U.S. relations are to the other countries that they are threatening?
I think we're doing exactly what we need to be doing. As of right now, we're doing everything we can. Sending them support, showing up at every single summit, showing our alliance, saying that we will help you no matter what. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say Finland brings a strength with them in that they have you have to serve in the military if you're a man in Finland between 18 and 30. So you have to do, so basically all of the men in Finland serve. So they do have a pretty strong army and a pretty well trained army. So, but they're also on the border of Russia. So can they afford to send troops to the Ukraine or to Canada if needed? That's the thing, right? Like, I don't know, because they got to protect their own interests too.
Yeah, you're right. Just one thing, because I'm gonna, sorry, I want to drive this point home because it's my thing. Sorry, but we need to stop, guys. We need to stop calling Ukraine the Ukraine. Like we can't say the Ukraine.
Russian ownership.
It implies Russian ownership and it's disrespectful. I know that people have been saying the Ukraine for a really long time, but we don't call Canada the Canada. We don't call, Finland the Finland. So let's just call it Ukraine. If we say that,
if I did.
No, it's okay. It's totally okay. It's like embedded, right? It's embedded for so many people into their brains because that's how they were. That's what people called them for so long. But it actually has to do, it implies ownership. So that's why we don't do that, especially now to support them. We got to be really mindful. Yeah, that's it. I wanted to point that out. Go ahead, Damien.
I have a wrench to toss in more to be a bit facetious, but isn't it the United States of America?
I mean, it's United States of America, but
that doesn't change your point at all, though. I'm just being annoying facetious, but you're right. We should stop calling it the Ukraine because it sounds weird and they don't like it.
No, yeah, exactly. And people became aware of that in 2022 when they were massively invaded by Russia. Obviously it started back in 2014, just to put that out there. But in 2022, when the world kind of woke up to it, is when a lot of people learned that we should stop calling it the Ukraine. Anyway, that's all I just wanted to point that out to everybody just going forward. when you're talking to your friends and your family, just to be mindful of that, especially out of respect in these dark times that they're facing. Because it's not easy for them, and it's not easy for anybody that's in Canada and in the United States who is a Ukrainian.
Slava Ukraini.
You know,
Yeah.
I think a reason I feel like we should be going to war, or we should not be delaying, is I feel like I'm so privileged to sit here in Canada in this peaceful country, and it's not like the Ukrainians have an option of taking years to, you know, prepare for a war. And I guess, I mean, I'm not saying I'm right because of this or anything. I think that that's maybe where some of my discomfort comes from. I just feel kind of bad that we can't do more because we're just sitting here kind of talking about it, and it's heartbreaking to hear them talk about giving away some very valuable resources through physical violence.
Yep. It's just countries also have to look out for themselves too. So this is why we have the strain and the conflict and the scrambling right now, is because all countries are looking at, okay, well, I need to protect us as well. If we give too much to them, then are we going to be prepared if anything happens to us? And that needs to be taken into account. That's why our leaders are working very hard right now to come up with a plan that secures our safety as well as their safety, right?
Yep. It's probably the smarter way to go, to be honest.
I mean, that's kind of how things have always been done in terms of diplomacy and democracy, is that we try the peaceful ways first. We try to do as much as we can by making sure that as many people as possible can stay safe. And only when all of those ways fail, then we can start applying more force and more force and more force. But until then, we do have to try any kind of somewhat peaceful resolution possible.
Do you want other people brought up, or you want to do it yourself?
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't see that there was people waiting there. There we go. So why don't we actually go through the panel and let everyone give their opinion on what they think could be done. Are we doing it right? Are we doing it wrong? Is there anything you would change? What would you change about it? How do you think this conflict is going to go, etc.? That way everybody can have a voice and speak out. Damien, I know we just heard from you and you already voiced it. So why don't we go with Joe and then Pixie and then Clever and then Alan and then Pre-Post and Jana and Panda. Let's just go through the full panel. And if you have nothing to say, that's okay too. So Joe?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, right now it's definitely going to be much more difficult in regards to challenging for Russia, for Ukraine to obviously continue to maintain. Hopefully, the support of the Europe, which has already been there, their increased support will hopefully balance it out a bit. I know Australia and New Zealand's also mentioned support, so that hopefully helps. Obviously, it's a little bit more challenging because they're far more distant. The only thing I can also think of is, Papadani took down some of the tariffs in regards to Russia. But with him doing the tariffs right now against Canada, Mexico, and China, and possibly more, that's going to set their entire economy on a tailspin. So whatever trade value that they may have, like they can do by opening up with Russia, they're going to potentially lose. So they're not going to be able to help Russia as much if all their products are stuff that they cannot, that Russia can't afford. So the second thing too is with these increases, like as it stands, the U.S. is still heading towards a really, really terrible time. They're looking at a potential recession if these tariffs stay in place for too long. Their projections of increased cost is just unbelievable, and I can't imagine business people in the background not calling the very politicians that they've been buying, like, what are you guys doing? We want the lower tax rates. We don't want the economy to become unstable. We lose money. That's not what we want. So I can't imagine this is going to be lasting for too long, which is unfortunate in a sense. It's fortunate and unfortunate at the same time. And kind of, I don't want the terrorists, but I want them to understand.
But we have to remember one thing. The rich get
Yeah,
richer during recessions and depressions. They
that's true.
buy up everything, right? As soon as the
Yeah,
economy crashes, they buy up all the land, they buy out all their competition, and they form
yeah.
monopolies. So I think, to be honest, this whole thing is a setup plan so that the rich can get richer and buy up all of their competition and all of the land.
That's an excellent point too. Fuck, forgot about that one.
Yeah. And
That's
they have the money to do it.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up because I think some people forget that this isn't really about Trump being president. It's sort of like they're robbing the place.
Yeah. Yeah, they're robbing it so that because if you look at Project 2025, if you look at the butterfly revolution, if you look at all of this like dark mega Silicon Valley plans that they had for the United States is to buy up land and create their own privatized cities with their own law enforcement, their own regulations, and to force people basically back into slavery. Like that's the end goal. And what better way to do it than a massive recession and depression where you can literally buy up everything?
I mean, if you go to the
Pixie.
US, you can
Oh,
become.
sorry.
If you're in jail in the U.S., you become a slave. So.
I'll pass.
Pixie, your turn.
I'll pass to the next. I got a customer right now. I'll come back. Come back.
Okay, no problem. Clever.
Hey everybody. So with respect to the tariffs, I'm losing my voice a little bit right now, so if I sound a little bit weird, sorry about that.
That's okay.
But
You're
but
good.
with the tariffs, they don't make sense to anybody, right? And so you have to assume that there is a plan in place. And I don't really think that this is only about the rich getting richer. The tariffs alienate the United States from the US and Canada. And they're also detrimental to the United States. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense, and that's kind of what Trudeau said today. But it only makes sense if it would then lead to a pathway for the United States to openly trade and remove all sanctions on Russia and to ally with Russia. And that's sort of what's happening right now. And with the tariffs in place, the economies that suffer are the ones that are Canada, basically, and Mexico and the EU. So they're trying to like destabilize the rest of the allied nations, which is in preparation for what? What's the end goal? The annexation of Canada is 100% a goal that Trump has and that Elon Musk has. Like they need our resources, they need our grid, they need our resources for so many different things, but they can't hold us. Like they don't have the military power. Nobody's going to go nuclear. They don't have the military power to hold us. So if they invaded us, the EU would come in, like all of our allied nations, the UK would come in, and they wouldn't be able to hold Canada. They would cause World War III. They need Canada to submit. They need Canada to surrender. And the way to do that is through the propaganda of making Canadians feel broken. And I think that where they have the only place where a miscalculation has really happened is in the patriotic response that Canada has had in unifying and being proud of what we are and acknowledging our differences and that we don't want to be like the United States. And so you feel or you see all of these bots or these people trying to sway opinion in the comment sections that are basically trying to reiterate that Canada is broken. We should become the 51st state. We pay too much for taxes. That's all bullshit. Like none of it makes any sense. Like it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. So I guess what my point is in saying all of that is I think that we're actually preparing for a much larger scale war than anybody's openly talking about right now. Like it's a much greater global threat than anybody is speaking about. And I'm very curious what's going to happen with Canadian politics to protect us internally from what's going on right now, because there's obvious Russian influence to try to continue promoting this narrative of broken Canada to get us to submit, because that's ultimately the goal. They want Canada to submit. That's
100%. I know.
yeah.
That's exactly what it is. That's why I have such a fear of a conservative government, but I don't know how much of the support that we're seeing for Pierre is real support or fake support, because I know the Conservative Party does not like to play fair. They don't. They create smear campaigns. all kinds of fake documents, fake pictures, all of those fake documents that they're circling around X right now with Mark Carney and like Epstein and stuff, which are so clearly fake. You can see people's like warped arms in it. It's very clearly AI. It's been debunked by fact checkers. Some of them were even made with Grok's AI. And it's just they do smear campaigns. It's constant smear campaigns, right? I mean, I don't know if you know what happened in BC, but the BC Conservatives are trying to basically overturn a fair and square election that just happened a couple of months ago, and they're going to extreme lengths to try to do it. But now they're under scrutiny. But it's just they play so dirty. They play so dirty.
I didn't hear about that in BC. I'd like to hear more about that maybe some other time.
Well, I've been analyzing a lot of the support. Sorry.
It's quite simple. There's one riding where the riding won by about 22 votes, and so the Conservatives tried to go into a housing full of people with mental illnesses, and took people out of that housing to try and take them to lawyers and get them to sign a piece of paper that stated that they didn't actually want to vote NDP. So yeah. And now somebody actually lost their housing because of that. So they're under major scrutiny for doing that. But this is how petty they are. So
sounds like something a conservative would do. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, this is the kind of politics they play, right? None of it is fair. None of it is real. They know that they can't win if they play fair, and they also do not hold their support base does not hold their politicians to the same accountability, like at all, right? I mean, they're still freaking out about Justin Trudeau and what he did when he was young, when he wore that Halloween costume that was questionable, but he apologized for it. He knew he was in the wrong. But then they don't say anything about guys like Scott Moe, who, was drinking and driving and ended up unaliving someone because of it. They don't say anything about Doug Ford and his past, with his brother being a narcotics dealer and him dealing other things, right? Like, that never gets looked at and put under scrutiny. But what Trudeau did at some random Halloween party when he was like in his early 20s, that's something that they won't let go of to this day.
Can we call that goldfish reasoning, where you just use whatever evidence you have at the moment to prove your point?
We can call it a bunch of different things.
It's something like that. It's maddening. I've noticed that, and it's maddening to me.
Yeah. But I want to let the rest of the panel talk about their feelings and their opinions on the kind of global conflict that we're dealing with now. So I want to let Alan, and then pre-post Jana, Panda, and then we'll go to our new panelist, Saintless.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. I've just finished reading Mark Carney's book Values. And I can really see where he's coming from, because something else I agree with is Kate Raworth's donut economy, which is being experimented on in Amsterdam right now, and it's working. If you put basically those two things together, we will be able to pull Canada out of this. It'll be able to build everything, and because he's already done it, right? He did it for England, and he's done it for Canada, and he's the guy they call in to fix a country. So if we have him in, we will be able to outweigh what's going on with Russia, because Russia is about to collapse if people don't realize that. Same as America. America is crumbling, like not just the stocks that are happening because Donald opened his mouth about tariffs. We're seeing like a decline anyway. The whole place is going down. So if we build the way that Carney is saying to build, and that's liberals here. I'm actually from England, but I'm now living in Canada. I think that'll be a good thing, and it'll be what we need, because Russia's about to crumble, and as long as it doesn't get all of the minerals and everything off Ukraine, we'll be okay. We just got to hold the line.
Yep.
That's exactly what we have to do.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if they don't get their grubby little hands on Ukraine's resources.
My issue
That's why I'm
really,
scared about them. That's why I'm scared. Give me 1 sec. That's why I'm scared about them potentially lifting sanctions. And Danielle, I'm going to let you speak, but usually what I do on my panels, I like to go in order so that everybody has a chance to speak. So I promise I will get to you. Hold on to that thought. But I want to hear from Pre-Post, Jana, Panda, and then we'll go to Danielle. Or Saintless, actually. Sorry, Danielle, you just popped up.
All right, thank you.
We'll be quick.
I am super quick. I am almost annoyingly succinct. But the things that I'd like to hear from you about are I am cautiously optimistic about Canada as a whole. My concern is about soundbite consumers versus the voters who do not consume news in detail. And then internationally, my concern is, the UN is a replacement of the League of Nations. Do we need to actually replace that with a brand new coalition that is not just the EU and Canada, but also Australia and other countries? What do you feel about that?
I'm gonna try to kind of get back to that after I let everyone speak, but I think that's kind of already in the works. And we can talk about like propaganda and news and stuff after, because that's a whole different conversation. So I want to let other people give me their opinions, and then we will come back to chat about that. Okay? Jana.
Hey, there's so much going on. I don't even know what to talk about. The thing
Well,
that
no, just your opinion on whether like we're doing the right thing, whether the EU is doing the right thing. What else could they be doing? Like, just what's your opinion on this situation and how these countries are coming together and trying to figure out the best way to move forward in terms of supporting Ukraine and protecting themselves?
I think, and it's a tough one, but number one, we obviously have to back off of the United States. Like we cannot be depending on them. We cannot be counting on them. And it's not even in 4 years. We don't know that 4 years is going to make any difference at this point. Like people say that as if Trump is going to actually have an election. We don't know that's going to happen, do we? He may find a way of just staying in power, and on top of that, so I think that what we need to do is exactly what we're doing. And I think Carney is the right person to do this, is for us we need to build new alliances for a long time. Like this is going to change the scape of the world forever, or for a very long time. The United States isn't just going to bounce back in 4 years. Even if Trump goes out, like the damage is going to be so serious, because we're going to need to make long-term trade agreements with other countries, the EU, maybe China, etc. So I think at the end of the day, what we need to do, we need to defend Ukraine. I'm very pleased that if we're going to be helping them further, because we should be doing that. And as for response, so far, I want to see that Starlink deal ripped up, and I haven't seen Doug Ford do it yet, and I'm waiting.
There was news sources today. There was at least 4 news sources that I saw saying that Doug Ford is ripping up the Starlink deal.
Let's hope.
I hope so. I know he talks a lot. I know he talks a lot, and he's already said he's going to do it once and then backtrack. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen there. But in the 4 articles I read today, he said that he's going to rip it up.
Which is good. That's what we need to do. And why would we want Starlink when we know what's happened over in Ukraine with Starlink and Musk?
Exactly.
We can't trust it. So why would we want it regardless? Why would we want Starlink? I would never have Starlink. We can't trust it.
I mean, I know a lot of people that live in rural areas that would not have working internet without it, unfortunately. But there are other ways to do it, and we need to invest in those ways ASAP.
Exactly.
Panda.
Yeah, so in terms of the EU, especially like with us already with the tariffs currently in place and us starting to move away from the United States, I think we're absolutely doing the right thing. And I think Europe, like the EU in general, and us as well, putting in more support for Ukraine as time goes on is ultimately a good thing. I'm angry and upset as a Ukrainian Canadian about Zelensky feeling forced to come back to DC to sign that awful deal. Ultimately, it's a frightening time to be alive.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough time. I'm I'm also from Eastern Europe, so I get it. It's pretty crazy. People
I
in
don't
my
see. Sorry, I don't see the problem in him signing because he's just got to get through each little bit at a time, each stage at a time. Because like the Burger King cholesterol god of death might get the Burger King eater. We don't know, right? And then it's all changed. Or he could pull a Budapest and say, "Yeah, we had an agreement, but you know what? Here's my middle finger." And that's what we got to say because now we have Europe backing us. He just has to space it over this little time. So I don't have any trouble with him signing it. And we know why America's after it because China told America to go whistle, right?
Yep. Yep. And Putin wants it too. Let's not forget that the reason that Putin has always had its eyes on Ukraine, and that's why he kept putting Russian puppets in charge, was to take advantage of their resources, right?
Yep. Yep.
That's why they invaded in 2014 when Yankovich was basically overthrown by the Ukrainian people, is because all of a sudden they were like, oh, we're not going to get your resources anymore? Shit, let's take them by force.
Yep. If anybody here has watched the documentary Winter on Fire, it's about Ukraine and the Russian puppets and how they went against it without a single gun or anything. They were walking up the road, getting taken out by snipers and everything. They just kept walking until this guy gets so freaked out, he got on his helicopter, flew back to Russia, and got thrown out of a window. Right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's why everybody needs to watch that documentary. And if you guys want to have another documentary to watch, if you want to get your popcorn out, watch Winter on Fire, and also watch Active Measures, so that you can understand the relationship that Trump has had with Russia for the last 40 years. Okay, I want to move over to Saintless, and then Danielle, and then Scott.
Hi, can you hear me? If you can, please let me know, and please interrupt me if I'm not being clear enough. I'm a socialist. After 9/11, it made sense. Carney, I like better than the others, but the way that I describe politics, I'm a Canadian, 41 years old. I've been here for, almost 40 years, is that I will accept each person's shit sandwich, but someone like, say, a Carney will have maybe 60% shit in that. And maybe someone like a PP might have 95% shit. So I'll have more shit in my teeth from the policies that a PP is trying to like implement and espouses for, especially when he's like saying, hey, racism doesn't exist, you idiot, you stop talking, please. Trump is belligerent. He's a businessman. What he does is effectively go to the tip top of like the negotiation table where he says, I want Greenland, I want Panama, I want to coup Venezuela for the lithium like Elon does. What he does is begin at the extreme end so that when he, like, I guess, stops at like, 25% tariff or 10% tariff, or like, he seems more manageable to people who don't understand what his tactics are. He's a businessman. He's a bad one, but he understands the basic baseline of what business is all about, right? Trying to create and frame the conversation. And his framing is always one extreme to the other. This is why when I speak to my mom, who like speaks 8-9 languages, I consider very, very politically astute. When we talk, it's like we hypothesize way better than CNN or MSNBC or anything typically on Canadian television, because there's a particular avenue of thinking that we have where we're like, you know what? Trump isn't all bad. If he's 95% bad, we can see a 5% window where he helps Gaza, and he did. But then we can also say, oh, there's the other part where he also immediately went against them by suggesting ethnic cleansing, right? To the Ukrainian woman who was there, I'm so sorry. I have a Ukrainian buddy who lives here in Canada with me. We went to college together back in 2016. So he left Ukraine before then, although he also did talk about the 2014 issues. And what he basically says is we could have had this done in 3 months, right? And me too, I was like reading that and I'm like, you know what, maybe I'm being, indoctrinated by Western media. But when I brought it to him, he's like, no, that's true. Boris Johnson, the US corporations, Trump and Obama, because it's all kind of connected, we're all basically like, no, we'll help you out, because they were going to give them money, and that money, that tax-based money, was just going to be funneled into.
But it's driving me nuts. Who's we? Who are you referring to with we? You keep saying we.
The West. My apologies, the West. Boris Johnson.
Okay. Sorry, I was just sort of like unclear.
Of course, yeah.
Thanks for clarifying.
Oh no, of course. So and yeah, please, if you need clarification. And so He said, yeah, we could have been done in 3 months. We would have lost some territory, what have you, but we wouldn't have the pain that she was talking about. Where quite literally, even people now, and I'll end on this, who are Ukrainian, um, who are living there now during the war, are literally asking themselves, "Oh, is this the time now to leave? When half of my country is going to go to Russia and the other half is going to go to the U.S. or the U.K."
Okay, thank you for sharing. I'm not sure that I've like actually what is the solution? Like what is now that we are where we are,
Yeah.
what would be the solution in your eyes going forward?
Well, first and foremost, and I think she would agree, is let the Ukrainian people have a seat at the table. That I think is what the outcrop was, the consequence of Zelensky. I don't care about civility politics, but there is a measure of like appropriateness where maybe I can argue Zelensky was being whatever, but Trump and JD no. So at first, yes, give them a seat at the table, give them the respect that is afforded to them for the fight that they very much were at the front lines of, because my buddy was willing to go back to Russia and enlist and then basically unalive.
Hold on, hold on. You said your
Yeah.
buddy was going to go back to Russia? I thought he was
Yeah.
Ukrainian.
No, well, Ukrainian Russian. So like he was born in Russia, but he's Ukrainian culturally. He lives in Ukraine as well. So like back and forth, that kind of thing at the border. So he was going
He's
to
like
go
a
back.
Russian
But then
national.
who would he enlist for? Ukraine or Russia?
No, Russia, because no, this was his plan. So he would enlist for Russia, and then he would allow his comrades to pass the border. And once they did, he would shoot them in the back. Right? That was his like conception of how I can help my Ukrainian nation for these people trying to steal our resources.
Okay, but if they're not getting a seat at the table, like at the end of the day, like, yeah, we all want Ukraine to have a seat at the table, but they're not getting one when it comes to Trump and Russia.
Oh no, for sure.
They're not.
Yeah, oh no, yeah, and that's the issue. And the issue then becomes like, how did they get it? And then trying to contextualize why they're not getting it. And I think someone maybe said it before. It's like, oh, they're neoliberals, they're conservatives, they're capitalists. They don't give a crap about the people, right? So us asking for like a basic baseline of humanity, hey, this concerns the Ukrainian people, have them have a seat at the table, and yet even this very basic thing is being argued against by Trump and JD, and on national, international television. It already tells us like, wow, the most basic stuff we need to argue for. Okay, fine, I'm here for it, sure. Then my answer is give them a seat. Once we do that, they'll tell you, and I think they've already said what they want. And the thing is, the West can give it like tomorrow. They can give it tomorrow. That's the thing. The solution is there, and they can give it tomorrow.
I guess I don't know. Are you guys clear on what the solution is? What that he's trying to say? Maybe I'm just not understanding properly. Does anybody have questions about that?
Well, I have the simplest question. In 1994, the United Kingdom, the United States, all agreed to give Ukraine sovereignty and to protect that sovereignty on the condition and the realization of them giving up the third largest nuclear arsenal in the entire world. And they did that. So they signed a document saying they would do this. So I take great, I guess to me, offense when we're trying to give them any kind of concession. Nobody owes Ukraine this. This is what we agreed to do.
But I'm not disagreeing.
I didn't know that. Thanks for letting me know.
We did.
Everything I said.
Yeah, but
Go ahead, please. Sorry.
So for me, that is what we're doing. And if we're going to balk on an agreement from some of the largest Western allies that we have, the United Kingdom being one of them, the United States, we know that the US are not an ally as of today. But it was an agreement that was made. My grandfather did not go and lie about his age 85 years ago to go and fight Hitler only to have us repeat the same history. And that's what we risk by not making them accountable to the word that they agreed to.
But I'm not denying that. If there was, yes, an agreement, and they should very much. But what we're talking about is what is happening now, right? And
Wait,
that agreement, from the
it wasn't
U.S.
Zelensky who created the war.
Oh no, I'm not saying that. I'm pro-Ukrainian. Remember, I'm pro the Ukrainian people, and I'm pro what they want, and what they want is a seat at the table and for their voices to be heard. And effectively, what they don't want is this: half their country's resources going to Russia, and half
Yep.
their country's resources going to the U.S., the U.K., and corporations because they feel justified in having giving them whatever 100 billion, 200 billion, or 300 billion to fight a war, mind you, that the U.S. and Boris Johnson were saying, "Hey, fight it." Remember, in the first 3 months, they were saying, "Hey, don't stop, don't negotiate, fight. We will help you." And they
Right.
did in some ways monetarily, but that's not all a war is. And unfortunately, they were used. Ukrainian people were used.
So my only question to you is this: they are still entitled to their sovereignty. How do they gain that if they have to concede anything?
You are right. It's a negotiation. Unfortunately, in like my Black Panther, black body type of thing, negotiation for like my humanity with someone, because that's an extreme form of like what you're asking. But in terms of a nation that's been through so much war, I'm not going to suggest to the Ukrainian people, oh, hey, accept this, right? Like, for example, that was Trump's equation. Accept this or you're risking World War III. And I was in my head asking myself, dude, you're the president of the United States.
What happened in the Oval Office was disgusting.
Yeah, exactly. So me and you, we're on the same side. Probably on the same side for most things. But my thing was,
I got to tell you, I didn't learn a lot about the war because my grandfather didn't speak about it for many, many decades because of the trauma he suffered. And the only thing he remembered after having 2 strokes was the war. And he told us, do not let it get to that again. And I do not think we understand the absolute risk that Donald Trump poses to the entire world.
we don't. No, we don't. We don't know. Okay, I'm a socialist, proud, and I can root it all in data and research and what have you. And because of that, I can tell you Trump, his mentality, and this, I will say I baseline the conservative mentality, and I'm not saying all conservatives, because I'm conservative in some ways, is through the UK stream, since we're Canadians, we might understand this, is very much only working for a certain type of demographic. If you're of whiteness, if you're male, if you're heteronormative, i.e. straight, if you're privileged, and if you're hierarchical, i.e. you believe in a religion where, say, for example, there's a God, and then underneath that, the second place position is filled by, a human man, right? So for me, conservative policies, which Trump, Bannon, all these people, Ford, PP, all very much are emblematic of, are very much for me the reason why potentially in 100 years, topsoil might be eroded. And I know I'm going off a topic of Ukraine, but it's all about sort of the unalivement of people, the harm, the disbenefit of it all. So it's all kind of connected to the mentality of someone like Trump, which is very, very conservative and very, very capitalistic.
I didn't order a salad.
I just landed and, I stopped chewing, so I'm going to eat my cud now. My apologies.
No, I appreciate your position on that.
I think a big mistake that everyone is making is thinking that Trump is a brain, a political person, or this is anything more than just a narcissistic person. He's just a dark triad narcissistic personality disorder, and he's in a position that he shouldn't be near anything. And this is the outcome. It's not like he's got some master plan. His master plan is self-loathing and trying to keep that mask up so nobody knows what he is.
Well, and I think you can agree with me then that the fuck around and find out part in the United States is now happening. Sorry, I cursed. But the reality is we as Canadians have an option here now, knowing what we're watching. We have an election coming, and we know that. We must do everything in our power to put the best person who's going to stand up to Donald Trump. And I don't agree and believe that that's...
And we need to maintain our trade agreements with the European Union. Yep. And to maintain those trade agreements, we need some sort of a carbon pricing, because a lot of those trade agreements have that part of their in the agreement. Yep. So whether we get rid of that carbon tax, whether you agree with it or not, there will be some sort of carbon pricing, because we'll need to maintain those trade agreements. So if somebody says we're going to, cut all this stuff, and let technology do it, technology isn't there yet.
Nope.
So it would take years. So
And we should be
just
taking a
be
page
aware of that.
out of Biden. What did Biden do in the last 2 years of his government? He created one of the biggest infrastructure bills in the Americans' history.
Yes.
And here's that opportunity for our government to do that. Because the one thing we're going to have to do is counteract these tariffs, because they're coming. That's as of today. But we need to come up with a plan. We've bailed out Main Street, never. We've bailed out Wall Street, Bay Street, but never the everyday Canadian. And you know what? I have no issue putting $100 billion into our debt if it means that we're going to build the infrastructure we've ignored for 60 years.
That's what Carney's going to do.
Yeah, Carney.
Somebody on one of these talk made a suggestion that we should do a strategic reserve of our rare earth minerals.
No.
Maintain the production, the what's there, and just the government buys it, and then
you're right. Yes. Yeah.
holds that, and then you could use that and create our own sovereign wealth fund using the rare earth.
Well,
that gives you power.
I believe
one at a time, please.
I believe we can take every penny of these tariffs that we have got to bring in now and use that towards shoring up the economy in this country.
Sure.
And getting rid of the interprovincial trade barriers, because they do.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Sure.
But we should have done that before.
We should have done that so long ago. And I want to add what Trump said about the tariff plan, what he said about, all the sort of America first stuff. I was arguing, I'm a socialist, but I was arguing he's right at baseline. But the problem is he didn't have the infrastructure. You need a 5, 10, 15-year plan for China. That was like within 10 or 15 years. They had an infrastructure plan where they can become self-sufficient. That's the whole point of socialism. We can do it in Canada. They could have done it in the US, but the problem is they don't care. It's all politics. It's all populist rhetoric. I'm a socialist. I know we can and do have the resources. We can and do have the capacity to implement policies to use those resources such that we're self-sufficient. That's because the indigenous for the past 3,000 years in the Americas quite literally kept up with the sciences of how to protect the minerals of the earth, to protect the forests, the waters, the air, right? They did that for us. Well, they did that for the planet. We are now benefiting from it. And within 100 years, we might lose it all because I'm going to bore down into this because we're not socialists. So for a Trump, he's a businessman. And the host said it. This is a plan, actually. This is not, Trump is just a narcissist and he's just a businessman. No. He might be just the id, but Bannon is the super ego. Steve Miller is the super ego. There's another dude, a financier billionaire, who quite literally is almost responsible. Sorry, there's two. I forget their names. They're responsible for financing all of this, along with Elon, where he
the Heritage Fund.
200 million. Yeah, they're part of the Heritage Fund. In fact, one of his daughters is on the board of the Heritage Fund. And so these people are the ones funding it, and there is a plan. And Bannon will literally tell you in those interviews, he is very, very honest. I appreciate Bannon for that honesty. He'll literally tell you, this is the plan. We can call it the cause. We can call it the movement. We can call it whatever, the butterfly revolution with Yarvin's stupid philosophies that very much should yes, that is the right response right there, the smirking as a Canadian. So, no, for sure. It's a lot of things wrong with these people, like sociopathic.
Can I also add to that it's not just them. There are a lot of American citizens who agree with exactly what they're doing, and they're answering those requests from their citizens. So, I mean, it might seem like these guys are these authoritarian figures and they're calling all the shots, but I've gone into these lives with these mega guys and they love it. They think it's the best thing ever.
It's stochastic, I don't know if I can say the T word, but stochastic terrorism.
There's a lot. I remember reading a book. It was the Washington Bullets. It was about the history of the CIA coups and assassinations, and that's where they first mentioned Elon Musk. And what happened was Elon Musk got a contract to make electronic cars and needed batteries. And in Peru, the president who was voted in, he was saying, "Well, hell, we got loads of caves of these great big, things to make batteries with. We're gonna supply that to America, no problem. They went and tried to assassinate this guy. They went in, and this is like, it doesn't matter who's in charge. They went in and they've been taking out people and taking their properties and everything else. So the annexing coming for Canada, it's just part of the same message. It's part of the same structure of Washington, of America. This is what it does. If we have stockpiles, they'll be coming.
Yeah, they're an extremely individualistic nation, and as long as it benefits them, they will go to the ends of the earth to achieve it. And if everyone else perishes from it, they don't care.
They don't ever hurt themselves. They're willing to suffer to hurt other people.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and we did say that we were going to come back. Hold on, sorry. We said that we are going to come back to this conversation, and obviously it's moving in this direction now. Because, at the end of the day, like, we all know the bad players here. We know the bad actors. The biggest problem is that they have so much citizen support. And they have a lot of citizen support up here in Canada, as disgusting as that sounds. But there's more and more Canadians every day that are like, 51st state, can't wait. So that's a problem that we have to figure out how to tackle. It's happening all over Europe as well. I'm sure Alan already knows about this, right? It's happening in the UK. It's happening in France. It's happening in Italy. It's definitely happening in Romania right now. The country is more divided than it's been since Ceausescu. Like, that's how bad it is right now. So this is a global wide phenomenon, and it is this cult mentality that is absolutely gaining so much traction. And the biggest problem is there's a lot of people that are apathetic, that don't know what's going on, that have no clue what's going on in the world around them. But then they see a couple of, posts up on Facebook, and they're like, oh my God, is this true? A politician said it. It must be true. Because somehow these guys believe anything that comes out of a politician's mouth without doing any research whatsoever on it. So it's pulling these apathetic people that were just unfortunately ignorant. It's pulling them into that cult mentality. And that's how they got to where they got. And that's how they will continue to gain more and more power, is by having these loyal followers and having a constant propaganda machine, right? I mean, if we look at 1930s Germany, Goebbels kept that propaganda machine going till the very last day.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the thing. Our biggest defense is knowledge and history right now. And a lot of people don't know it. They just have no idea. And I feel like we as citizens either need to start begging, pleading with our local journalists, with independent media, to cover stories related to what has got us to where we are now. Because obviously everyone on this panel has been informed and informed themselves, but there's so many ignorant people that just see clickbait, like you said. They're mobilized. But I have spoken to a lot of people who were on that side, and then when I would tell them or inform them of certain things, they completely switched. So I'm not convinced that they're not incapable of consuming facts and figures. I know that a lot of them don't want to hear it, but I do think that there is an argument here. We shouldn't feel defeated, and I think we need to take back the media in some way. And I don't know exactly how to do that, but I do think that those who care about getting
we're doing it.
Yeah, we're doing
it right now. Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
It needs to be on a wider scale. It needs as much as they're like, oh, mainstream media don't believe it. They listen to mainstream media. They all consume mainstream media. So they don't even know what mainstream media is anymore. So I just feel like if we consistently just ask for knowledge to be shared, there's some hope here, at least for us in Canada, in the way we approach this time.
I want to say something quickly, because Trump is about to start his announcement to Congress in 1 minute here. And Jana is going to keep us updated, because she's got it pulled up right now. So when you do have it, I can put you up on the big screen so that we can all kind of watch and hear together. I just wanted to quickly address one comment that Danielle made here when you said that a vote for Singh is giving PP a win. I just wanted to bring it back to, like, in terms of voting strategically, it's not really about, it's just about anything but conservative as long as they have the highest chance of winning in your riding, because there are certain ridings in like very more kind of liberal cities where an NDP win in that riding is actually the way to go to not give the vote to a conservative. So it's about knowing your riding. Like right now, I have no favorites. I genuinely have no favorites. I don't care. For me personally, I'm just strategically voting. And it's all about who's got the best chance to win in my riding. Like I'm at the point where I'm not loyal to any of the leftist parties. I'm for all of them right now, to be honest. Like if the Greens were going to win in my riding, I would vote Green. It doesn't matter to me as long as it is making sure that we don't split the vote. That's the only thing I care about.
I'm with you.
Right? So if we don't split the vote, if we can get ourselves together, we can use resources like smartvoting.ca or doing our own research for our own ridings to see past polling, past voting, and who's got the best chance now. That's what we need to look at. So that's what I wanted to bring attention to that, just because if somebody was reading that, what if they're in an NDP riding where the NDP has a higher chance than Liberals, right? So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that it's not about the leader. You're not voting for a leader this time around, guys. You are voting to keep a guy out of power. That's the most important thing going forward right now. Straight up.
And the thing is, where I live, my vote really won't matter because it's a conservative stronghold. But what I've done in past elections, I've actually swapped my vote. If I know somebody has a chance to really put somebody that's to the benefit of the majority of Canadians, I agree. I'll vote for your Green Party here if you'll vote for this party here.
Exactly.
That is mutual aid politics, and what that shows is like even if there's only a 1% increase where you are voting for the Green Party because you're in a NDP centric territory, that 1% increase is gonna show people, hey, there's maybe something here. Let me just check out the policies.
Yeah.
I mentioned that the reason we use.
Hold on, I just want to know, Jana, has he started talking?
No, still waiting. Soon, though.
Okay, cool. Just let us know. Interrupt us when it happens, okay?
Will do. Go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead, guys.
Oh, yeah. Strategic voting isn't about getting a certain party a majority. It's about preventing a certain party from getting majority.
Yes, exactly.
So it doesn't matter if we have an NDP and Liberal coalition again or whatever you want. That's fine by me.
Yep. I think that honestly, at this time in our Canadian political progress, I really think that the leftist parties, all of them, need to come together and work together more than anything, more than ever. If they can't show that they can work together, it's really gonna piss us off.
But the unfortunate thing, my apologies for interrupting. In France, the past year, if you've been following them, the left party won. Unfortunately, Macron, that neoliberal little shit, is not allowing them to come into power. So this is the unfortunate part, that even if leftists do get their shit together, even if they do win, I think they want a majority, if not at the very least the presidency, they won't even be allowed to. And that's what happens, unfortunately, under the neoliberal scheme of the last 50 years.
How would that happen in Canada? We're talking Canada, though, not France.
No, but this is the problem. It's an example, because remember, France is a liberal democracy.
What mechanism are they using Canada for that is what I'm asking. Like you say, it could happen? How?
I will say it's less likely because of our system, the first past the post type of thing, but it is still very much likely for just the fact that conservatives don't give a fuck about, my apologies for swearing, about like real policies, right? The thing is, they'll implement only things that work for a type of person who is rich, and if they're if they're straight, all the better. It's just basically capital induced. So that's all I'm saying. The example in France for a liberal democracy, for one of the vaunted Western liberal democracies, they didn't follow their rules. So why would anyone expect Canadians or a PP or a Ford to, right? Ford quite literally, I think, broke he broke a lot of laws, but he broke 2 or 3 voter Canada vote laws. So no one's talking about that. Trump, how many? Tens of thousands? The whole point is,
I mean, we
yeah, go
we
ahead,
were
please.
personally just talking about leftist parties coming together. We weren't talking about how conservatives would work with anybody. We were not talking about the conservatives coming together with any other parties because we know they won't.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
we know
but
they
they will
won't.
attack
We
us.
know
But
they
they will
won't.
attack us, and unfortunately,
100%.
the voter base.
They
Unfortunately,
did
they have a
though.
better story. They have a better
They
story. They have
did.
better
I don't
messaging. They
think they
have
did.
better messaging. No, no, no. They have a
Conservatives
better
did
story.
come together. They
Yeah,
used
Yeah.
to be the
exactly.
Reform Party and the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
So
And
they
they
are
come
one
together
party
and they have
today.
a better story. Not
Right.
to say
But
that it's
here's what they've been
better.
doing.
Yeah, go
And
ahead.
for since they have come together, that amalgamation, what they have done is, and notice the word that a conservative uses, they always call it a coalition if two parties to the left work together. They do it. It's constant because people don't like the word coalition.
Yeah.
What I find is I find two parties, and you think about it, the majority of governments in the last 30 years in our country have only been made up of 39% of the electorate when the other 60% voted for other parties.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which is why I was so upset with Trudeau for breaking his promise on ridding us of first past the post. However, it's probably going to save us. You know, I think about the fact that Pierre Poilievre is losing ground in the two provinces he can't, and that's Quebec and Ontario.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that Ford did, yes, he called an election because he was popular and he got really tough. And yes, he called it a year in advance when he didn't have to after passing legislation saying you can't call an election for 4 straight years. But they do this. This is politicians. When they think they're going to win, they do things like this. But the reality of the situation is this. We cannot afford to do the hurry up and find out stuff with Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah,
He's our bigger threat, right?
absolutely.
He is, especially in light of what we're seeing. This is a man who delivered coffee and donuts to people who desecrated our war memorial just because they could not go out and get a haircut.
Now that we watched this speech, let's talk about it. That was so, yeah. That was so that Nerdy can end up cutting the speech when we post it on YouTube. So we're good.
Okay. I will do that right now. Actually, we cut out the audio too for you guys. There you go. It's gone.
Perfect. Sorry that I'm down here and not I'm in my usual spot, but my phone ran out of battery, so it has to be plugged in now.
No, that's completely fair.
Yeah. So
I am going to keep an eye on the video right now, but it looks it's just going to be going to pundits now. They're going to do some conversation, but we can do this ourselves.
yeah, that's what we're doing.
Well, the worrying thing there that he said, it was all worrying, but when he said about Panama, that was brutal. And I'd like to see the fact checking on the other stuff, but look, the Panama, that's an act of war.
That's exactly what I was about to ask you. Was I the only one that thought, hey, that declaration for Panama, isn't that maybe an act of war?
I mean, if he said
That's
it about Canada, we would consider it an act of war. So I can only assume Panama would consider it that.
Yeah.
Speaking of, he did talk about annexing us without outright saying it.
Yep.
And that's fucking terrifying.
He wants
Excuse my language.
wants us to want him to annex us. So
He's
I don't.
narcissist. They always want to be wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, the references to Mexico, the references to Greenland, right? He said, "We're not going to take Greenland, but we are." But that's basically what he said. He's like, "We're not going to do it one way or another. We're going to do it."
Like if he said that about us, we would immediately lose our shit. So I can only imagine the people of Greenland how they would be feeling right now.
It's more than Greenland because Greenland's plonked in a certain position that whoever controls that, we know Russia's going to be sneaking past it when they don't get detected with the submarines, and then they'll be able to do a lot more damage to the whole world when they try and take it. We know what's happening. Nobody is stupid in the room, and it's coming.
Unfortunately, they have a large base that has no clue what's going on.
Yep.
I just couldn't believe the raunchous applause during such degrading things being announced. It's just
right.
I'm actually kind of exhausted and not fully believing anything he says. He says he's going to do whatever in whatever. He also said he was going to tariff us on February 4th or whatever it was.
April 2nd, he said.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
you're
tariff?
saying like
Additional tariffs on
before?
April
I don't
2nd.
care if
Yeah.
he said a date he's going to do something, and now he's going back on his. He said he was going to retaliate if Canada retaliated, and now he's might meet him halfway. I don't know. I want to see what he actually does and criticize that rather than just what he says. Because
But
he
is
says
he
a lot
putting
of shit.
tariff then? Like, was that even clear that he is tariff with us now, or is he saying April 2nd? I'm confused.
No, he was saying that he's tariffing us now, but whatever tariffs we retaliate with, he's going to retaliate with more on April 2nd that are going to match what we put on them.
But he also said he's going to meet us halfway or something. So what does that mean?
Well, he didn't say that. One of his advisors said that maybe they're going to meet us halfway. We're going to talk about it tomorrow. But yeah, I don't even know if Trump knows that one of his advisors said that, to be honest. Oh, I'm having like heart attack pains over here. I'm trying to like move my left arm. I'm like, am I just having anxiety or am I getting a full blown heart attack? I'm not sure.
I'm really scared for Panama and Greenland right now because that seems to be it's like against their will kind of attacks might come from.
And his conversation about all of Mexico being full of cartel. I work with people in Mexico. They live normal lives. Like they're not, I mean, I understand that there's some like crime there, but it's not the way he made it sound.
Yeah.
Never is. And the tokenization of so many victims.
Yeah, that was gross. I can't believe they got those people to show up, to be honest.
I wonder, like, I my understanding was Lake and Riley's family didn't want this, and now there they are. Like, what did he buy them? Like,
probably.
I have to wonder, you know,
a lot of money. It'll come out.
It's sad.
That little girl in the middle, she didn't even want to be there, you know.
No.
Well, and then there's two. They were talking about the father that died, and then he talks about how God saved him.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the most horrible juxtapositions I've ever seen. You lost your dad, and he was such a hero, but God saved you.
Yeah.
But they know what they're doing, and everything they did was scripted and playing to who they're trying to talk to.
Yep.
That was a very scripted.
I can think of somebody who wanted to hear it.
And I was going to say, and it wasn't just for the megas of America, it was for the megas of the world.
Yeah.
It felt like another Trump rally, to be honest.
Yeah, that's all it felt. It really did feel like that, which I have to wonder, you know, how Kamala Harris said you should go to a Trump rally, you'll get bored and want to leave early kind of thing. I'm just wondering if anyone felt that way, who might have voted Trump, but didn't, you know, wasn't like a MAGA.
About halfway through, so it was fatigue. Like just
it just felt like lie fatigue, like just manipulation fatigue.
I had a hard time stomaching the whole thing. It took me a lot to just hold on to the end because I wanted to hear all of it. But damn.
Can I get people to mute their microphones when somebody else is talking? Because we're getting some background noise. That's yeah, thank you. Just when you're talking, go for it, have your mic on, but when you're not talking, try to turn it off because we're getting some weird feedback. That's it. Okay, Damien, go back to what you were saying.
I forget.
Sorry that I interrupted.
Well, the fact that we all felt physically sick at the beginning of this, you know, and because we know social media, we're aware of the little tactics that are being played there and the you know, the segues to families that I'm concerned with, and he's not. And we, you know, it's just the whole thing. It's just a reality TV show, isn't it? Really, with deadly consequences and outrageous rewards.
And the way he spoke about Ukraine and Russia as if he was some peacekeeper was insane.
He wants the Nobel Prize. But it looks like they're going to give it to Starmer in England because it's Starmer that's actually pulling everyone together in Europe right now. And he's ready to send troops over, and he's got Germany to send the latest like missiles without even being tested. They're going straight to the front line. So we're lining up on Poland with armies now. It's in action.
Yeah.
What was his
I get
comment about Europe buying more oil, like from Russia? Was that a true statement?
I don't know. I haven't followed that side of things.
Which statement that he?
He said that Europe has been buying Russian oil, but more oil than they've sent help to Ukraine.
I mean, some countries in Europe have been, not
Sure.
all of them, but there's countries in Europe that aren't really united on the,
Right.
European front, and there's countries that have Putin puppets in charge. So
Exactly right. Well,
What he was
used that.
talking about is the North Stream or Nord Stream pipeline that comes, and a lot of the European countries were using Russian gas to heat their homes. But like Germany is now getting off that. But it takes time for these countries to cut these ties with this. So
Right. They
Yeah,
probably
and
had to find
also-
other resources, right? So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plus, the people in charge of the country at the time, like we had the conservatives in charge that were just as bad as Trump, and that's why they were taking Russian gas, and that's why it's being turned off now because we've got a different, policy in place.
yeah. I was gonna say, Perry, if you can hear me, you're not connecting, so just swipe in and swipe back out, and I'll invite you up again. Just request up again because it's not connecting for some reason.
I'd like to see what the response to this is going to be from PP. Like I don't understand. This is crazy.
He's just going to repeat himself and say, I am not MAGA. We're going to stand strong. Canada first. And then right after that, he's going to start talking about how horrible the Liberals are and how Canada's broken. Like, does he have anything else to talk about ever?
Carbon.
right.
And the fact that
I
he's
don't-
over to Canada first, and I'm not MAGA, to be like really a great development for him. He hasn't changed much in years, and finally he was pushed to it when he realized that we'd be calling him a traitor if he kept up with his lax attitude.
But I mean, there was about the tariffs. I think it was today, right? Where earlier today, everybody spoke about the tariffs. Jagmeet did, Trudeau did, Doug Ford did, and then PP did. And PP was literally like, "We're going to be strong," and then immediately switched into taking the next 10 to 15 minutes to talk about how everything's broken and the Liberals suck.
Yeah.
It was like the most horrible part of all of the speeches that were done by our leaders.
According to the Toronto Star, Polyev said that today that Canadian counter tariffs should go to fund tax cuts.
Yeah.
Because that's what's really
tax
crushing
cuts
us.
to
Of course,
whom,
that's
though?
just the
That's the
point.
question. Tax cuts to whom? Because I'm pretty sure he's not talking about me.
Billionaires.
Exactly.
Billionaires.
It's a playbook right out of Trump. Yeah, it's a playbook that for the last 150 years, I can say, maybe 175, the conservative stream within the West has played out, and it's worked. Why would they change when it's worked for quite literally 150 years?
This is true.
Like who they are
Yeah.
as a philosophy.
Yeah, exactly. And my buddy, he's an anarcho-capitalist, and he said, you know what? It's not even an ideology. Because I'm like, oh, what do you mean? He's like, sometimes they don't even follow it. They don't give a shit. Really, there's only one thing. If you have money, they'll take care of you. And I'm like, I guess you're right, I suppose. He's like, no. It isn't an ideology. At least with an ideology, you can argue against it. You have some sort of framework in mind to build up like a consensus to make someone change their mind about it, right? But this is just about passion. This is just about, oh, you have money like me. I'm going to help you take over the world. And then when people complain about it, I'm going to say that they're Marxists, you know, they're all these like little things that we shouldn't pay attention to. And I'll help you, you know, take everything that the world offers to everyone. That's insane.
That's why the language here works with conservatives when you really think about it, right? There are three things that conservatives are notorious for saying. They call the left, if they happen to work together, they call it a coalition, and yet nobody understands that
the Reform and the Conservatives actually became one party. And they constantly call us socialists because we know the word is bad, right? Or a social democracy. If we didn't have socialism in this country in some form, we wouldn't have universal health care. We wouldn't have
Absolutely.
GI. We wouldn't have Canada Pension. And you know, I remember when Canada Pension, my dad was one of the first to ever pay into it, right? And I can tell you, it was never intended for everything that people demand of it, because the idea behind it was that government would force corporations to create their own pension plans. And what did we see happen when people like, well, companies like Sears went bankrupt, right? Those executives still got their windfall, yet they drove the company into the ground. And yet Mike Myers' brother, who worked for Sears Canada for 32 years, lost his pension.
What is it that people are demanding of pension? You said,
Well,
I don't know what you mean by that.
Because if you go and look on any Facebook post about, don't you think seniors should get a 70% or 80% pension? It was never designed to give you 80%. It was only ever designed to give 50% because it was supposed to be reciprocal for generations. Do you notice it's the only fund in the entire country, in the entire federal coffers, that the government actually can't touch? It has to be managed by the provinces and the territories collectively.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Do you see what I'm saying? I have no issue with a senior getting more. Quite honestly, if Singh had decided to say 6 million seniors in this country got pharmacare, got their medications paid for because they were seniors, do you know how much that would prevent in our healthcare system down the road? Billions. Because a senior isn't going to decide whether they're going to eat or take medication.
Exactly. And for the socialist here, socialist leaning policies, not even socialist policies, socialist leaning policies during the 1940s and the 1980s, before neoliberalism came in with a wily scream, showcased the fact that like it works. There was a boom, it was a golden age period, such that like even people just with a high school education, and I'm not denigrating it, but with just a high school education, they could go find a job that paid well, that could potentially like put their kids through college, cottage, all the sort of stuff that we think of like just a basic good life, you could do between a certain period. Now, mind you, it wasn't for women, it wasn't for black folk, but the underlying thing was, oh, these socialist leaning policies do and can work. And that's just the U.S. I could talk about Canada too, because we picked, I forgot what his name is, but you know, Jack Bauer's grandfather, the healthcare guy. We picked him as like the #1 Canadian ever. And while I disagree, like it was at least a good choice, whereas Britain picked Churchill, that G-cider maniac. So for sure, go socialist or go home, or go home and cry. Because again, sorry, I'll land on this. Trump literally defunded childcare, defunded child cancer care, defunded childhood education, defunded Medicaid, defunded Medicare. And yesterday I was part of a live where a woman who was a caregiver, who did deal with elderly people, who even dealt with people who were in their 30s, because this is what the truth is, people in their 30s also have to use Medicare and Medicaid. And she was bawling on the live, and we were just like telling her she was a hero, and she was. And they're basically, her institution is just basically having all these meetings to discuss this distress, and it's awful because again, Trump is a sociopath, and his billionaire buddies are all sociopaths.
I mean, he literally said during that speech that he would kick out anyone who disagrees with his policies. So.
He posted today on his social media that he intends to go after students who protest.
I saw that. That made me
right. Like if we thought the 60s was anything, do you know what I mean? And the Berkeley protest was probably the most violent, right? He is going to be violent because nobody's going to stop him.
And
someone who's been involved,
universities as well that allow this kind of stuff too. So it's not just like
the
protesters; it's the universities.
But he also
someone who's been involved in a lot of the protests. There's a lot of protests around Canada in regards to and I did help out in regards to the Canadian protests for Palestine at universities. I've marched in quite a few of them for Palestine around Ottawa. As well as direct defense, and trans at school, trans issues at school boards and numerous other places, and have seen lawfare against protesters. Seeing this escalation is a horrifying thing. It's And it's always, again, this is still adds to the whole point, and I feel it terrible because I feel I'm repeating myself, as we all are. But it's true, which is just this is more mustache man repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And then the death penalty for anyone who kills a cop.
Yeah.
Well, not all
Respect the authority or else.
And yet he let out 1,500 people that committed a seditionist, treasonous act on January 6th, some of them responsible for the death of 6 police officers.
Yeah.
But yet this time, we talk about the mustache man, but this time it is more coordinated, and it's easier to have the global coordination when doing this. Joe, you just talked about all of these other protests, and they're all of those protests are part of this speech. They were all a lead up to get the Biden and the people to be able to step and clap to this speech. Right? So the people in the room who were clapping weren't the only people who were clapping to that speech. People around the world were conditioned to hate certain people and clap for that.
Yeah.
So many.
This is what I'm saying. Like, the mustache man had his speeches and his rallies, and yeah, he went, like, it reached a lot of people, but it reached a lot of immediate people, and they didn't have the technology then that we have today.
Mm-hmm.
This is being broadcast everywhere.
That's the thing. Like, you would have thought that the technology we had today would have worked in our advantage, not to our
But it was
detriment.
owned by only the very few, and that's what it is. It's the very few.
Well, having this
naive
available to
assumption.
us is an advantage, because in my world there aren't people that say enough people that think this way. So having this, knowing that there's other people out there, and I'm going to go out and participate with my elections this time around and do whatever I can.
Yep, I spend every election period, whenever there's an election in my province or in my city, I go and I do part of the remuneration and making sure I get people on the voters registry.
Yeah.
My parents taught me that, you know, it wasn't just my legal right to vote, it was my duty to vote. Because we should never take for granted the democracy that we live in. That's what my parents truly believed.
I
But
felt
60% of
all four major parties, four major in the West, including Green, in one election or another. So I'm whoever's the person that best represents me, that's who I vote for.
I got to tell you, I went door knocking in Alberta when I still lived there, and I went on behalf of the NDP, and let me tell you, I mean, I got myself and our actual MLA who had been elected, literally chased down the street with a truck.
I used to be a part of a site called Something Awful. And they have this little joke tagline, which is "The internet makes you stupid." And I thought that was a joke at first, but as I get older and older, I realize more and more that maybe it's true. I'm naive, and I maybe at one point I assumed that people with the right information will make the right decisions. But I guess we didn't count on people lacking critical thinking skills and the ability to actually work with the information provided.
And not necessarily that, Damien, but I think it comes down to that we have come to a point where the majority of society is willing to consume information that's not truthful.
Mm-hmm.
And take that information as truthful over actual critical fact.
Yep.
We all saw that with COVID, right?
Yeah.
And you can, you know, it's up to you. But I always was when I was in university, we were taught that your rights end when you infringe upon somebody else's rights. You know, and quite
exactly.
So
but they found a way to make it convincing, though, right? Yeah. Like, so, and they're coordinated. Again, they're coordinated. Like I've heard recently, when people start a podcast, let's say, right, and they're on the right wing, and they start spewing stuff about the right wing, and then other right wingers will pick them up and say, "Here, these are the talking points that you need to do. This is where we're going." Yep. They collectively pool together and coddle that person and give them the talking points they need to be able to be successful with what they're talking about. We don't do that. Like, we talks, we speak to people separately, and we have like a lot of the same message, but some of us have different issues that we feel strongly about, right? Like, so we're not as unified as they are.
No, but I think the other thing is that we all have to understand that not every government's going to come through with everything they have promised. Right?
But
it's just the reality, right? Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but Trudeau did promise the end of first past the post. That was a promise he made, and it was the first one he broke. But you want to know what? The promise that was more important to me as a voter, and I don't even have children, okay, was that he was going to make the child tax benefit tax-free and lift children out of poverty. He took 400,000 children out of poverty with that policy. That wasn't a small amount of children in this country. Right? I pay school taxes and I don't have children. Do you want to know why? Because I don't want children in my country not to have the ability to have critical thinking skills. And they need an education to do that.
I don't think we can opt out, can we?
Read above a 6th grade reading level.
I don't think we can opt out of paying school taxes.
We can't, exactly. But you want to know what? I don't see it as a bad thing paying it. And I don't have
children. I don't either. Sorry, I just misunderstood because it sounded like you pay it by choice, and I was like, I don't think we have a choice. So,
no, but
I'm good with it too, right? My kids are grown. I'm good with it too.
Well,
my choice is between the Catholic school board and the public, and of course, you know, given I'm an LGBT person, at a reality, you know, I've had the Catholic schools tell me that I don't exist or don't have the right to exist. You know, so I've never ever
sinner.
Well, that's what it comes down to. And quite honestly, you know, when somebody says that to me, I said, well, you know what, you said the F word. You've committed the same equal sin as I did.
Yeah.
Right? And it usually keeps them quiet at that point. But you know, it's 30 years.
They're talking about sinners yet. Let's you know, bring up the topic of Catholic priests. So they get a little bit, you know, suddenly they're appreciative of the vow of silence.
I don't commit sin because I don't believe it. Sorry.
Can I make a point? Sorry, I've been trying to get this in for a while since we were talking about protests earlier. At the end of the day, like he said what he said about the protests in the universities and stuff, because there are a lot of protests going on around America right now that we're not seeing. Yep. Because the world is blind to them because they want us to be. They don't want us to know how many people are actually against this administration. They want people to not understand it's happening. So people do still have time right now. And that's the thing, is we're talking about it. We're creating fear for a lot of people to not go out and protest, but they have to. It is their right. And if the schools lose funding, then the schools lose funding, because right now their freedom and their way of life is more important than the funding of the schools. So people are going to have to risk something. People in America have to risk their lives. People in America have to risk their funding for different companies, but they have to get out there and do it. They have to.
I agree.
Because otherwise, it's all over.
Well, exactly.
They have a window, a tiny little window of time right now before most likely martial law gets called.
What's an interesting thing is, do you remember well, I was around when Tiananmen Square happened, you know, and I still remember that one student standing in front of that tank. And if we saw that in the world and we knew what he was doing was deadly to that man, and we stood up and we said, I mean, you know, Trudeau could have done a couple of things different, but you want to know, I mean, he even followed the treaty when we were asked to keep the president or the CEO of Huawei in prison, right? And what was that at the expense of 2 innocent Canadians being stuck in China for 5 years? We still followed the treaty. We still followed the rule. And Trump had the audacity to create a trade war because of a lie. 43 pounds of fentanyl has crossed our borders into the United States. That is it. That is according to their statistical data. How do we have a fentanyl problem coming from Calgary or from Canada into the United States when the bigger problem is we have more guns coming into this country from the Americans? But we're not holding
a very, very small percentage of that fentanyl was on its way to the States, right? Like, so the rest of it was going where, like Denmark? I don't know if somebody needs to correct me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was not going to the U.S. anyway,
Yeah.
right?
But it was the
And
amount that
you're
was
absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Frontline, when you say that. They do have a small window, and the only thing is that if they lose that window, it's almost impossible to get the democracy back, right? And we see other countries fighting for their democracy. South Korea just recently went through that whole situation where the prime minister or president, whatever he is, declared martial law. And they went through this. They fought back. They were like, not again. We're not going through this again in our lifetime.
Yep.
The people fought back against it immediately before anything could be enacted.
As I said, my biggest worry though, my biggest worry is that people have been so conditioned over the last 10 years to not pay attention to what's going on. There are people in America right now that still don't know what's going on. For example, I'm a gamer. I have not really gamed much lately because I just can't bring myself to do it. But I game with a lot of Americans, and I ask them, I'm like, how are you guys doing? How is your family doing? Like, you guys didn't want Trump as your president. Like, how are you handling this? And they're like, oh, we're just kind of trying to get along and just, we're just doing our day-to-day stuff. We're not really paying attention to it because it's just too hard to pay attention to, and there's like nothing we can do about it. So we're just doing our everyday life. And then in Canada, you have people that have no clue. All they know is that Donald Trump is the president. They have no clue what he's done since inauguration. Not a single clue. And they don't want to know about it. No. Right? I've had people tell me, I've literally had people tell me, oh, we just live in different worlds. I just choose not to pay attention to this because, I don't need to bother with it. It's not affecting me, and I just want to keep on worrying about my own life and having fun and doing whatever. There are people that go out every weekend still and are partying and having fun, and they have no clue what's about to hit them. And that's what they're banking on. Yeah. That's what they're banking on. Even Macklemore said it in his new song. He said that, Americans are out of sight, out of mind, and so are Canadians. And this is what is going to ruin all of us, because most people are good people. They are just completely uninformed and apathetic because they have been programmed to be that way for at least 2 decades now.
Well, with the advent of social media, they've just done it so quickly.
Yeah. I want to let Happy talk, though, because I know that he had his hand up.
No, just in response to a couple of things that were said. I didn't really want to go too far into it, but there's a percentage of people who need to do those kinds of things in order to survive, though, right? They need to mask, they need to be able to blend in, because they understand that some parts of the United States are more apt to irrational behaviors and violence in particular. So you have a lot of people struggling with, I know it's my civic duty, but I don't want to, and that's what the other side is willing to do. You've seen cars driving into groups of people and stuff like that. That's really going to drive disenfranchisement, a hopelessness in people. That will lead to not voting, right, and voter apathy, stuff like that. So I think we need to steer away from blaming people that we know for trying to live. I don't know.
Yeah, but then when does it? What's the tipping point? I'm sorry, but I do look at everybody who's apathetic and everybody that's choosing not to be informed and not to get involved and not do anything as selfish. You are okay, there's certain people, let's say marginalized groups that might be living in fear, but there is a lot of YT people that are just going on, doing their thing, going to parties every weekend, figuring out what margarita flavor they want to pick up. I don't know. That is unacceptable. That is selfish. That is 110% selfish. And it's because they've been fed this ideology over time, right? With the law of attraction and Oprah Winfrey, all positive vibes all the time. that like they don't want to, they do not want to sink their teeth into what's really going on, because that takes away from their immediate happiness, and they don't realize how selfish that is. And we know from history that they are to blame. They are to blame. Those are the people that let the most horrible things on this earth happen, because they turned a blind eye, because they were selfish.
I also want to say that
that's the truth.
Ignoring politics is also a privilege you have in society. It's not something everyone has the ability to really do. I can't really ignore the attacks on my various identities in terms of queerness or disability. I can't just ignore it, right? Because it's going to affect me in material ways. So just be like, oh, we should let these people be apathetic. I view it as a privilege and also selfish. So I also would agree with Frontline that that's no excuse. And the people who ordered the whatever burger at their election in November are the ones who helped them get elected because they were okay with it. That's what not voting means. I'm not saying you should have to vote, but if you're not going to vote, you're okay. You're sort of okay with whatever you get. And during peaceful times, that was okay to argue against that. But these days, apathy means that you're letting the fascists take over your country and destroy your freedom. This isn't like a normal time in history. This isn't a time we can just be friendly to people who want to tune out. Though I recognize that I do it also. I'm sure we all do it to an extent. But like,
if it doesn't affect us personally.
No, but I think you're conflating the two different people that we were talking about here. And you're talking about people who are not voting or not participating or turning a blind eye. But I'm talking about people who in an act of self-preservation don't necessarily out themselves in situations where that could put them into compromising positions in their everyday life. I'm not trying to take away from what Frontline was saying. I'm just, amongst that group, there's a bunch of people that are being overlooked. Just like when we start talking about Americans with blanket statements and start condemning them, there's 75 million Americans who voted against this. And there's millions of Americans who are speaking up for us as well. So I don't think that nothing should be done. I just think that, pulling the pin on a hand grenade right now is a little early.
They should have spoken
hold
up
on,
and stood up for us in
I did
November. My God, that's when they should have stood up and made their voices heard in November. Not now, because I don't care if the Americans support us. I don't care if an American supports Canada. I don't know what that even means. Are you going to war against us? Are you going to try to make your state secede? Are you going to actually take any physical action, or do you just want people to think you're nice?
I think when it comes down to it, Frontline, you're absolutely right, and you're in a unique situation compared to me, for example, with your homeland, right? So, Damien, you're in a different situation, and Danielle too, and I don't know some of the others, but anyway, you guys are in a different scenario, and voting has a particular deeper importance for some of you than it does for somebody like me. I vote for others for the most part, but I'm a white male, right? And my vote can go either way. It won't affect me as much. However, voting and politics happens to you, not just you just do politics, right? And it happens to you. Some of you, it impacts some of you more than others. If that makes any sense. I mean, people in the LGBTQ community, obviously, we heard today's speech, and these are people who are impacted a lot more than I would ever be in that scenario, is what I'm trying to say.
It's going to be interesting to hear the Democratic response to tonight's
It'll be
dog
interesting
whistle
because
speech. They already have a response. It was already out, but I didn't catch the whole thing, so I wanted to wait till I could see the whole thing.
as an openly
I think my point wasn't
hear
that
from my friends.
we don't know what is to blame. My point, as Damien and Frontline, we're pointing out I just meant that instead of vilification, I think we need to work on a better delivery system to motivate in the United States the 300 or the 270 million people that didn't vote who were eligible to vote. And I think that dogpiling on them, becomes problematic towards getting our message across, because conflict and confrontation doesn't usually end well.
Right.
I think it just
Yeah, but
further
I
I'm
divides.
also
not wanting to help the U.S. at all. I think that they should figure out their own stuff. I'm Canadian. I want to worry about my people and our allies. I don't want to worry about the Americans or what. Like they can do what they're going to do. It's not even really my business.
But
They
that's also
they
being
elected
that's
Donald
taking a
Trump
nationalistic perspective as well.
democratically. Are we forgetting Donald Trump was
Can we
elected
please let
democratically?
one person speak at a time? Sorry, it's just getting a little clouded. I don't know who's speaking. Damien, finish what you want to say, and then Nicolina, and then I'm gonna say what I wanted to say earlier, and then Danielle, and then we'll go back to Happy. Okay?
Yeah, I guess wrap it up real quick. He was elected democratically. It wasn't a coup. There was no force used, no coercion really. It was just a straight up election that they elected the wrong guy.
I just wanted to point out, I work with a lot of Americans as well, and a lot of them did not vote because of Israel Gaza. Like that whole thing. They did not know who to pick. And unfortunately, I know who I would have chosen given what was on the table, but a lot of people were just so clouded in their judgment. So
Totally
I don't
feel
know if it was
now.
complete apathy in some of these cases. It was just complete not knowing. So it's a tough one when it comes to Republicans and Democrats in terms of the policies because the Democrats are not perfect. But yeah, it just that whole the lack of voting going on over there had a lot of semantics at play, unfortunately, that made Kamala not win.
That's all I was saying.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I know that was a huge issue, but in my eyes, personally, this is the problem with a single like a single issue voter, right?
Oh yeah,
You
oh
have
yeah.
to, you can't just go, oh, I don't know what to do, but I'm only looking at the single issue. Look at all the other issues too.
No,
That's how you
100%.
know who to vote for, is by looking at the dude said that he's going to do this. The dude said he's going to be a dictator. He said all these things. So if you were still not sure about who to vote for, that to me is a privileged protest vote.
I agree. And I
That's
do
what
think that the
my
bot
that's
farms went crazy though, saying he never started a war before, so why would he do one now? And everyone who was maybe not into politics who saw that were like, yeah. I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying there was so much working against and corruption in this election that I just can't even count.
Oh, he had the nerve to bring up the Abraham Accord too. Like, it didn't pave the way for what happened in Palestine in the first place.
For me, it's when are we going to be able to vilify people for their choices? Because they were choices
I'm going
from
to I do it now.
77 million people. I want to vilify 77 million people.
I know.
You want to know why? Because what did we hear? They're not going to listen to us in the first 4 years of his term. Okay. And they didn't. And I met so many, even Canadians who said, well, he's not a politician and he would get my vote. He's very much a politician from the word go. So don't hand me that garbage. But nobody's even talking about the fact that how many American people were denied their rights to vote, right? You're hearing that state governors were removing hundreds of thousands of people off the register rolls. That's taking somebody's right to vote away. End of story. And
Yeah,
then
what
you
happened in
decided
Pennsylvania, wasn't it?
that certain people can't vote anymore. Like, did you know if you get convicted of a crime in Canada, once you've served your time, you can vote, but not in the United
Actually,
States.
that's not fully accurate. If you are serving time, you can vote in Canada.
Yep.
I know
Yeah.
this firsthand
Yes.
because
In Manitoba,
my friend right now, she's incarcerated, and she got more inmates to vote during the against Doug Ford because she was trying to inspire more. Obviously not enough with the results, but yeah, in Canada, you're still a Canadian citizen, therefore you still have the right to vote.
In a provincial election, yes. Not in a federal
Yes.
election. Once you have completed your incarceration, you get to vote again. But you don't get to vote if you are incarcerated during a federal election. That's the actual rule.
Are we
So
sure?
marginalized groups are not ever going to be able to.
But in the United States, once you've been convicted of a felony, you don't legally have the right to vote anymore. But the majority of states, you don't. right? They purposely set out to stop people from voting because they knew it was going to be the problem. You want to know why Biden won? Because people were so worried that they went to the polls and they voted that typically wouldn't vote. We have to give people the ability and encouragement to go and vote.
Didn't more people turn out for this election?
More people.
No.
No, actually, no.
10 million
No.
people less or something like that.
10 million
Same
less?
amount of Republicans, fewer Democrats.
I want to make a correction here. So, according to Elections Canada, Canadians who will be 18 years of age or older on polling day, and who are in correctional institutions or a federal penitentiary in Canada, may vote by special ballot in an election or referendum. Wow. So, even if you're incarcerated, you can still vote, regardless of any level. And that's from Elections Canada. That's the same thing with Elections Ontario.
That's interesting.
Sorry?
I would like to know when that was changed because, the guy that's running to be our prime minister for the Conservatives, Mr. Poilievre, was the minister of the Democratic Reform. He was, right? And he was trying to even stop people.
Oh, his act was repealed. Because I think you're right. His act was an attempt to try to do that, but it took away a right, freedom of expression in regards to voting.
They were
and
purposely
that's
setting
one of the
out to
reasons
make
why
sure
it was
First
taken out.
Nations people couldn't vote in this country because they have a post office box as their mailing address. That was part of the reason the repeal happened. I remember that, and I still remember that. Pierre Poilievre is not out to help all Canadians. He's out to help the Canadians that are going to get him elected.
Yeah.
Right.
Elections. So election fixing is always sort of kind of a tricky thing to do with the laws. We're seeing it right now in the U.S. with regards to the SAVE Act, where they're trying to say, unless it's on the original document, you're not going to be able to do, and this is going to cause many women who are married to lose their ability to vote.
67 million women.
Yep.
Jesus Christ.
Sounds about right.
Sorry, what was the justification for that? What was their reasoning?
Election safety, because immigrants, or whatever you want to call it, or whatever reason they're putting it in there, it's to secure it. So they're forcing you to use original documents like your birth certificate, which would have your maiden name, not could be your name change. This would effectively remove married women as well as also people who change their name for example, for a gender change.
Yep.
For transitioning.
Mm-hmm.
So if you change your name to go with it, as well as obviously your gender, which he blatantly attacked already tonight, that would affect you too.
Yep. It's incredible. I'm part of the LGBT community, and I've never ever feared, in Canada at least, I've never feared for my life. And here's the reason: I grew up in a city that had the very first openly gay mayor elected, right, in all of North America. Okay, so I mean, gosh, it's interesting because I also remember what happened to Matthew Shepard. I remember those things, and that really, the American people rallied around change after Matthew was so badly beaten and left to die, right? And yet, in not even 20 years, and his parents have dedicated their lives to ending the idea of hate for people you don't know. Is all of that work, because for some reason there's this mentality amongst our society now that if you're not with me, I have to be against you. And we watched a man drive a car through a group of protesters, and then
it just happened again.
The United States outright said there wasn't bad people on both sides.
It just happened again.
Where?
Germany once.
I thought you were referring to something recent within the past week or something.
It was in the past week.
In the Germany one, it was a gentleman who was mentally ill.
Was it?
Yeah, that's what they were saying, that there wasn't anything to do with politics, but he was mentally unstable. But again, he had to go to that extreme because why? What part of the system has failed him if there is that, right? I'm tired of saying that a senior is more important than a homeless person. I'm tired of somebody telling me that a homeless person is more important than an immigrant. The reality is a human being is not illegal in my mindset. Right? Just
agree.
because of where you're born shouldn't matter. And people need to think about the last 40 years of political interference by the American governments of past for why they have 200,000 people trying to go to their border every single year. Because those are the countries that they were having all of the, I mean, when you think of what they did in Ecuador and all of those countries, like the American government destabilized those countries. And that's why these people are fighting for their lives. But it is not illegal in this country, according to the Geneva Convention on which my country signed on to, that if somebody comes to a port or a border and asks for asylum, they've committed no crime, according to the Geneva Convention. So the fact that we're willing to say we're willing to do this for a man that just hates immigrants is beyond me.
I agree. Guys, we do have to end the live in 10 minutes because I promised I wouldn't go over 4 hours. So I want to let everybody say their piece, and then if we want to continue chatting, either I can go live on my own profile, or Joe, if you want, you can go live and I'll join you. But we can keep the conversation going because I know there's a lot that all of us still want to talk about. But I got to end this one. So I'm going to let everyone say their last, little bit, and then we're going to end this one. And then I'm either going to go on mine, or Joe, you can go on yours and I'll join you, whatever works. Sure. All right.
Do you have guest ability? Do you have guest ability yet?
Dude, January.
I should. This should be the one that would give me the guest ability. So I think that this one would be the third one. So we can try it out, and if I don't have it, we'll go to yours.
Yep, that works.
Okay.
And
okay, cool.
I appreciate what you said. I wanted to say happy. I do appreciate what he's saying about those individuals that are just doing what they can to preserve what's going on in their life, just to live.
Yeah, and I was going to say that earlier. That's why I said, if you're in a marginalized community, if you're scared for your life, then I do understand that. But there are a lot of people, and I'm talking about the masses here. There's a lot of privileged people that just don't want to pay attention because they wouldn't have as much fun at their Friday night party if they did.
I agree with you there. That's obvious. Yeah, you're right.
And I'm not happy about those people because what's the famous saying, right? It's like at first they came for the immigrants and that didn't include me, so I didn't pay attention to it. And then they came for the LGBTQ community, and then that didn't affect me, blah blah blah. And then they came for me.
And there was nobody left to speak on my behalf.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just saying there's better, more ripe and tastier fruit on the tree of perseverance, and when we can motivate people to act in their best interest as opposed to continually widen that gap between Canadians, I think we can yield better results.
Yep.
That's all I was saying.
Yep. And I agree. I agree with you, Happy. Nothing that you said was wrong by any means. I was just actually agreeing with you and saying, yes, there is a group of people that are justified in wanting to protect themselves. But there is a whole massive group that
have no explanation or excuse.
That have no excuse in my eyes. I've had to give up my...
the first guy to step in front of those people too with you, man. Honest to God, I'll take one right on the chin there. I've been there, I live it, and I'm with you there.
Yeah, my best friend since we were 13, we ended her friendship when Donald Trump won the election because she just doesn't care. She just doesn't care because she thinks that the law of attraction, you can't pay attention to anything negative because it's going to stop the abundance from coming in, and doesn't want to hear the news, doesn't want to know what's going on, just keeps thinking that if she doesn't pay attention to it, it's never going to affect her. And I just couldn't be friends with somebody like that anymore. So somebody that I've been friends with for over 2 decades now is out of my life.
Yep. I didn't talk to a family member for 3 years because of his ideals of Trump.
Yeah.
Right.
But I want to let everybody say their last piece. So let's go through the panel. We're going to start with Damien, then go Joe, Saintless, Scott, Kingston, Nicolina, Danielle, Happy. Say your piece, and then I'm going to end the live, and we'll continue on either over on my channel or Joe's. We'll see if I can take guests. If I can, great. If not, we'll move over to Joe's.
I'm the fallback.
Let the American empire crumble.
Well said, Joe.
Agreed. I would say, particularly, and I put the message already out to this, and I sent it out on Blue Sky too. If you have, especially people in marginalized communities that you know, particularly in the states, reach out to them and just make sure they're doing okay. Worst feelings right now, seeing your government, bring out so much hate towards you, and feeling alone. Make sure they just don't feel alone. That's it.
Thank you. St. Louis, if you are around. Okay, we'll move over. Scott?
Support your small businesses in your local community. They're going to need every backing because the larger businesses are going to support them with whatever. But those smaller businesses, they're going to need you. So.
Yep, agreed. Fully agreed. Kingston?
I watched the speech tonight and the opposition speech, a little bit of it. Briefly, I want to say that I'm optimistic that Canadians will vote, but I have to say that I'm very disturbed what's happening in the States. They may not have a real election again, and is consolidating the power, and the U.S. Constitution is so flawed, and I'll explain that in a different discussion, that gives him the ability to consolidate the power more and more with the help of Congress. So I don't know if they will ever have another fair election ever again.
Thanks. Yeah, I've been warning people about that since before he was elected. Nicolina?
I just want to say that no matter how exhausting it gets, I hope no one here ever stops speaking truth and fighting for what's right and getting discouraged by what's going on in the world, because every single voice here matters and can change people's minds for the better.
Agreed. Danielle?
For me, just stand up if you have the power to stand up and help others. Because that's how we're going to get through.
Yep. I agree. Happy?
I guess just buy local where you can. Keep your head down. Stick on the ice. Let's go. It's going to be a little while. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Elbows up.
All right. My last 2 cents is the same thing, especially with a recession looming on the horizon. If we don't shop local, we can say goodbye to our local businesses, because that's what happens during recessions. That's what happens when the economy takes a downward turn, right? The big corporations buy up everything. They buy up their competitions and they monopolize. And if we want to make sure that that doesn't happen here, support local. If you have a butcher, go to your butcher. If you have a farmer's market, go to the farmer's market. Do whatever you can. If that means that you need to eat less junk food, well, take it as a blessing in disguise. Maybe you'll lose a couple pounds while you're at it. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, if you have the money and if you have the capabilities, I know not everybody does. I know not everybody lives in a town where they can shop local and they're forced to go to the big box stores. But if you can, for the love of everything you hold dear, for the love of this country, shop local. Please. It makes such a big difference. Support as much local businesses as humanly possible. When you want to go out to eat, don't go to a restaurant that's a big chain. Find a local restaurant. Find a local coffee shop. Don't go to Starbucks. Go to your cute little Italian cafe that's run by a nice Italian family. Like, do that, and we'll get through this. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I want to thank everybody so much for not letting me watch that terrible speech all by myself. The fact that we all watched it together is what helped me get through it. I honestly have no idea if I would have been able to get through that alone. So community is vastly important, more than anything. And I just want to thank everybody for being part of the community. Thank you guys so much for just being here for each other and supporting each other and amplifying each other. We need to do that more than ever. So big thank you, big shout out to everybody in the Beaver team And yeah, we have shows every single day. We have shows late at night, and then on, I think, I don't have them in front of me right now because my phone is still plugged in. But I know that Friday and I think Thursday, there's shows in the middle of the day as well. If you want to find out what they are, just go to our Beaver Politics page, our profile, and you will see some pinned videos. And in those videos, you can find out what all the shows are. So thank you guys so much. You're all awesome. I'm going to take like 2 minutes to go to the washroom and order myself a big giant burger. And then I'll meet you on my platform for whoever wants to continue the conversation. Okay?